Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to episode 26 of the Alec Walt Show. I'm your host, Alec Walt, alongside another very special guest. And today, we're going to talk about the Boston Bruins. According to multiple reports, the Bruins are nearing a deal with forward Taylor Hall. And joining me, of course, today is my good friend, DJ Mitchell, from the Morningscape podcast, the Charging Buffalo, and the Mayo Media Network. This kid is all over the place. And I know how much it irks you that Taylor Hall is on the Bruins because we got him for absolutely nothing. And so since we gave him another deal, I just had to have you back on the show, DJ. Welcome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And it's kind of the story of Taylor Hall's career, is being traded for way under value and potentially nothing in the end, because Adam Larson, as we now saw, has left the Edmonton Oilers and moved on to the Seattle Kraken, which I'm repping today. We're going to be doing. Don't worry, we'll get back to the Kraken in another episode. But it is really interesting to look at his trade history. There's actually a website that just tracks by team or by player. And looking through Taylor Hall, I mean, even Arizona, I mean, honestly, they got him for not a ton.
It was a first round pick, right?
Yeah, there was a first round pick, Kevin Ball. I don't know if I'll look it up really quickly while we talk. But Taylor Hall, first off, $6 million. It's believed to be 4 years with a no move clause. I think that it makes a ton of sense. I think that it's almost certainly going to happen by tomorrow. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. It does seem like the actual holdup is that no move clause. So getting back to it, Taylor Hall to the Coyotes. The Coyotes got a conditional first round pick, which was top 3 protected. So they ended up getting a first round pick in 2020, a third round pick in 21, Kevin Ball, who's been nothing, Nick Merkley, who has actually had a little bit of production with the Devils, but not much, and a guy named Nate Schnarr. I have no idea who that is. And Blake Spears also went back to the Coyotes. So again, it's not nothing, I guess. Probably the biggest get was the Devils of anyone. So it's definitely been, again, not meeting value ever for a former first round pick that has an MVP season under his belt and really, really performed well in the playoffs for you guys. So we'll see. I mean, the Sabres do what the Sabres do best, and that's be terrible. So we're not surprised at all.
So you saw Taylor Hall go from the Sabres to the Bruins. Many expected with him alongside a Jack Eichel, he would explode. And one thing he didn't do very much in Buffalo was score goals. I think he had more goals with the Bruins in his first 3 or 4 games than he did his entire time with the Buffalo Sabres. DJ, with what you saw, what changed from his time in Buffalo to with the Boston Bruins?
Yeah, I mean, with the Sabres, the whole dysfunction around the team all season, it kind of allows me to take many of their players and just let the season go as a wash. When Taylor Hall came in, it did seem like they were going to try to split him up from Eichel to start the year. They brought him together at times. He looked better with Eichel. Most players do. But when you put him out there with a bunch of guys that just aren't either NHL quality or barely NHL quality, he's just not going to produce. Taylor Hall going into this year, what my biggest piece on him is he's amazing at creating off the rush. And that led to him actually kind of becoming more of a playmaker, especially in Arizona and New Jersey, where they just didn't have setup men. But when he got to Boston, they put him on a line with guys that could actually move the puck to him, which was a new occurrence for him. He just hadn't seen it, it felt like. And it was one of those things where it was like, did the Sabres really have no one besides Jack, who once he went out, it was just done? I mean, Taylor Hall was done at that point, and Taylor Hall clearly wanted out. So, you put Taylor Hall on a line with guys that can produce on their own. And I really think he's best served in a role where he can be the guy to move the puck up ice, whether it's from a defenseman or not, and then find his position in the offensive zone once he gains entry. If you have a player at center, Krejci's and you're obviously you wish Patrice Bergeron, but he's on the perfection line most of the time, can find that puck to then move it to the right area. Like, he's very nifty in that respect. I think Taylor Hall was just very undervalued on the Sabres roster. They did not seem to know how to use him at all. They finished dead last. So it makes sense that they can't even capitalize on a former MVP in any capacity. It was just amazing. So.
Yeah, well, we've been hearing reports since Taylor Hall's come to Boston that he has expressed interest in returning. And obviously it looks like he will be doing that. Now, the real question is the Bruins now have to look at the rest of this roster. Yes, that top line set. They have 2 second line wingers set. Let's start with that second line, DJ. There, David Krejci is a unrestricted free agent. With the $20 million left in cap space, a hole in net and on the blue line, do you think it's realistic that Krejci could come back to Boston? And if he does, how much do you think he's going to sign for?
God, it's been really silent on that front. It's been honestly very surprising. I do wonder if Seattle took a swing there in some capacity, just trying to get more locker room presence, and maybe Krejci just wasn't willing to make that kind of a jump. We'll never know for sure, but it does seem like that would be something they were interested in. I don't know if Boston wants to commit to anything more than 1 year. I'm guessing most teams don't. There's been a decline, but not much. I think he's worth a flyer for 2 years, but I really doubt the Bruins are going to want to do that, especially with them, I think that they know they need to add something to compete with Tampa, to compete with Toronto coming back to their division. And Krejci's just not going to push the needle quite far enough. So if losing him is the catalyst for bringing in a bigger piece, I think that's the avenue they're looking to go, especially on defense, where, I mean, just frankly, that's where they lost it. The 6-2 loss to end the year against the Islanders was just the defense having absolutely nothing to show for themselves. And the power play driving Boston's offense to, trying to make it back in that game that just never came to fruition. So I think they're going to make a swing on a defenseman. I don't know who that is yet. I think we'll get more information tomorrow when the NHL draft is. We're recording this on Thursday before the draft. So yeah, you can't ride McAvoy, an injured McAvoy at that, and Grzelcyk, into the dust. They lose a guy in Jeremy Lauzon, who I like. Okay, I don't think it's anything that you're going to be crying about. He might not even crack their top six. I kind of think he's a fringe six guy myself. So that's what I think they're going to end up doing. They could bring him back, but I mean, who do you think the replacement is if it's not him?
See, that's the thing, is they have Charlie Coyle. I don't know how perfect he is to run a line with Hall and Smith. I mean, those two are so talented. I feel like you or me could play that center spot and be pretty successful. But, when you look at the Bruins right now, the next man up in the rotation is him. Now, they have Curtis Lazar, who I don't think is going to make that second line jump. You watch him in Buffalo. I watch him in Boston. He 10 to 12 minutes a game, get some hits, hopefully score a goal, get an assist. But that's the role he needs to play, and that's the role I expect him to play in Boston. Now, when you look at their farm system right now, it looks like their main option for promotion is Jack Studnicka. Now, is he ready to make that large of a jump? It's still yet to be seen. He did spend some time in Boston last year when they needed some help in the top six. But DJ, just from what you've seen, do you think Studnicka will make that jump? Should make that jump? What do you see his role potentially being next year with either in Boston or in Providence?
Yeah, when he made the jump up to Boston, more often than not, it wasn't a top six role, because I think they see him as a guy that can produce. He's really turned into quite a little playmaker himself. He had that huge breakout year in Providence in 2019-2020 before the season got suspended. He was almost a point per game. Last year, they only played 11 games with him in the lineup because he was in Boston for most of the year. Didn't really have a lot of production there. 7 assists, no goals. I think he's got playmaking upside. I think they're concerned, and maybe, and this is fixable, because you look at a guy like you just mentioned in Curtis Lazar. When he came into the league, it was like, this is a sniper. This is nothing else. And now he's turned into a pretty good defensive role player. So I'm not saying you couldn't fix it. And I think Boston has the coaching too, but I don't believe they want to put him in the bottom six because he has been a liability defensively. So I do think that his best avenue for making the team is being better, because I don't think there was a reason he didn't make the top six last year. And then they rotated a ton of guys in before finally getting Taylor Hall. And he kind of seemed to just be like a, maybe quite a lot of the times and plays a very diminished role. So he's got to get better. He's got time to get better, and I hope that he could do it, because I think they're going to need that kind of playmaker to play alongside Hall, like I just mentioned. So he's your best chance at it. I don't know if he's going to get there or not. You could look at a million different prospects and make a million different analogies, and every team overrates their prospect and every fan overrates every one of their favorite team's prospects. So from an outside perspective, I think that, he's got the ability to get it done. I do think we've seen it, but I really do worry about them having a defensive liability. So he has to fix that side of his game if he wants to break into the Bruins lineup, which is, probably the opposite of the Sabres, having the best culture and one of the hardest work ethics. And then, so maybe he could just get in there and they fix it and they can get him going again. But he's got to get that done first.
Yeah, it should make his life a little bit easier if he's next to a Taylor Hall or a Craig Smith. We'll definitely see how the Bruins need to construct their lines depending on if David Krejci returns or not. But yeah, I definitely do expect the Bruins to be active here in free agency, but it should be interesting to see what happens with the centerman in David Krejci. So we talked a little bit about this defense. They did bring back Brandon Carlo, who is dealing with some injuries. Charlie McAvoy is obviously one of the best defensemen in this league. But after that, man, we got Grzelcyk, Clifton, Jakub Zaboro, who played a part-time role last year. The depth is a massive concern. After watching Mike Riley last year, he was very productive for the Bruins. Yes, he doesn't fill that role of providing some size. I do think the Bruins need some more grit there in their bottom four defensively. But what do you think for someone like Riley? Could you see him returning? And with the $20 million in cap space, is it worth giving him some sort of deal in this offseason?
I mean, personally, I would say yes. I also would just predecess this all by saying that in the analytics community, he's been a bit of a darling to come on as of late. I think we did talk about this the one time I was on before, how he kind of came into the league as this. Yeah, the deadline show. He kind of came into the league as this like really solid prospect that didn't want to sign with his team. And I don't want to break down all of the nuances to the how that works, but basically he graduated college and had the ability to forego going to the Columbus Blue Jackets and sign with the Minnesota Wild. He went to the University of Minnesota and just kind of never got there. It seemed like. Minnesota was short-lived, went to Montreal and then Ottawa before finally kind of catching lightning in a bottle and really having, I thought, a really strong finish to the season in Boston, especially with the injuries they were facing. And like I said, I don't think McAvoy was healthy the whole playoffs. And I think he picked up a pretty big load, especially offensively, trying to create and generate more offense. So I think they do try to bring him back, and I don't think it's going to cost him much. It's a 28-year-old defenseman who has very, up and down, I guess numbers and metrics, never really cracking more than, 3 goals in the league in a single season, before last year kind of having his best offensive year, getting 20. Well, he had 27 points. So yeah, I think they find a way to bring him back. And I don't really see why he wouldn't want to be there and they wouldn't want to have him. So I do think they bring him back, but I do think, if you're a team that's trying to compete in this league, you're going to need to get at least one more sound defenseman in there. There's a number of players on the market I think they could consider. Is there one guy you're keying in on in any capacity, or are you still are you open?
I mean, I would love someone with experience. So obviously the first man that comes to mind is Suter. I don't know how realistic that is, but when you look at the Bruins defense right now, 23, 24, 27, 26, 24.
I think it's reasonable. I think him and Alec Martinez are the two I kind of got pegged. I know Vegas.
Martinez, I feel like he is going to make some money. He's probably going to sign a deal that gets him more than $4 million a season. Again, with no David Krejci and no Tuukka Rask and the need for a couple of defensemen, is it worth going after and giving? Now, you have to pay someone. You have to get someone legitimate here on this defense, but I feel like you could do better than a Martinez, especially if you're going to spend that much money. And I know we can get really deep into trades. I don't want to go into that deep rumors, but impossible. Let's be real here. You and I both watched Jake DeBrusk last year. I think he's a very real option to get moved for a defenseman.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't think there's a player in the league that has quite the story, if you will, that he's had. Where, obviously everyone's going to compare him forever to that draft class where they went 1, 2, and 3 and, kind of seemingly wanted him over the rest. You look at his season by season and you see a guy that had how many? I think he was almost 27 goals in 2018, 2019.
Was a machine.
And, I think it's reasonable to think that he could still have some of that skill. What happened? Who knows? Normally the aging curve doesn't hit at 22 and you fall off a cliff. And now by 24, you get diminished to a fourth line role. But that's kind of what's happened here. So I think that, it makes a lot of sense for both sides to think like maybe this marriage needs to split. I think that some team might, his biggest problem is his cap hit right now for one more year. He's just clearly not worth the almost $4 million, 3 3/4 almost there that he's getting. But I do think there's enough teams that might be willing to take that on. I think a team, honestly, like Seattle could. And I think and the thing about Seattle that I think we have to remember is that they took 30 players and they're only going to keep 24. So they're going to be getting some of these players are going to go away, and they took a ton of defensemen. So I really think that kind of not to get deep into weeds on trades, but I think that makes a ton of sense because Seattle has room for him in the top 6, can try to look if they can recapture that 30 goal upside. I do think that's where they're going to try to go with that kind of narrative. But getting back to just defensemen, if you're looking to either, make a signing and move out that money, as we mentioned, that could be the problem. I do love Alec Martinez. I like Suter more than I think most. He had a really solid year again in huge minutes. And I know this was talked about on a lot of different podcasts. There might not be a player other than Duncan Keith that's played the amount of minutes he has per game for this long. Those are the two, and he still has it. So I think that makes a ton of sense for Boston, but no one seems to know where he wants to go. And I do think he'd be cheap. I think he might sign for $2 or $3 million. He's already making like $8 million from the freaking Wild next year, so he might as well.
I mean, he's a lefty, so he'd play on that top line next to McAvoy.
Yeah.
Your second line would be Carlo Grzelcyk on power play situations. You move Grzelcyk up to that top role, maybe give, depending if you have Riley or not, you got some options there. But I think adding a veteran and then adding someone with size makes a ton of sense for the Bruins because they're really outside of Carlo, who has concussion history. They're not the toughest. And when you have to get out of the East playing a Lightning or playing a Islanders, you've seen this team before in those types of series, and they get beat up and they don't know how to respond and they lose.
Yeah, a guy like Nicholas Hjalmarsson too could be another avenue to go. 34 coming up a pretty experienced. Alexander Edler, 35, a lot of experience, and he played. If you what I do a lot of, if you don't follow me at all, is a lot of analytics on gambling, and a guy that produces a lot of shots and a lot of blocks, Alexander Edler. I mean, he's always getting in front of the puck, and I really think he wants to go to a winner, which is why he's not going to. He could re-sign in Vancouver. That's not off the table, but if he doesn't, I think a team that he thinks is going to be a winner is where he wants to go because he wants playoffs before he retires. So those are probably the main guys to target for the Bruins. And I think they're going to end up with 2, whether it be through free agency or trades. I think 2 guys are going to join that unit because they know it cannot last. And every team that wins a cup, I look at Tampa, back-to-back years, they had guys coming off the bench, making something happen for them. And guys that Jan Ruda, who's just like a 7th guy in Chicago that no one thought of, producing because you need that. And I think that Boston knows that now, and I think they're going to figure it out.
Yeah, so one thing they need to figure out, and I think is one of the biggest questions coming into this offseason, I'm surprised it's taken nearly 18 minutes for us to even address this, but I'm looking at their contracts right now, and under 21, 22 in the goaltending, Tuukka and Halak are both unrestricted free agents. Everyone loves Jeremy Swayman. Obviously, Vladar was the goalie they protected in the expansion draft. But DJ, is there a youth movement coming in Boston in net, or do you see one of the veterans returning and joining Swayman in the crease?
I mean, the one note that, and again, this might not be completely 100% certainly fact, but one thing that seemed to be, at least from listening to guys like Elliot Friedman, etc., is that when Taylor Hall was going from Buffalo to Boston, Buffalo really wanted one of those goalies, and Boston would not move them. It was off the table. They were not going to do it. And that, again, if you want to look into it, you can try to fact check it. I still think that's very accurate. I do think that they want both of these guys in Boston this year, whether it's both as, starters or maybe one of them kind of is a bit of a third man in, and they bring back one of these guys is yet to be seen. I would be shocked if they brought back Rask and Halak, though. I really do think it's going to be these two, but and the amazing part is free agency is like next week. And I've heard nothing about this. It doesn't even sound like there's much movement in any direction. And maybe there's been so much going on that it's hard to get a gauge on it. And I think the Bruins are probably a better team at keeping things internal and not getting a lot of rumors made about them. So it is kind of tough to gather, but I would be really surprised because it sounded like the Buffalo was maybe willing to do it for one of those goalies and like a third or something, and they were not willing to budge. Like, they want these 2 guys. I'm pretty high on Swayman as a prospect myself. I kind of like him to be a guy that could make a pretty big jump. Most of the people that followed him through college at Maine were really high on him. He came into Boston in 10 games played. He had a .945 save percentage, which is just bananas. And then he went to Providence for 9, had a .933 save percentage. Again, just really, really unbelievable numbers for a guy in his first professional season after just dominating in Maine and like carrying that team to like, they never won like the whatever it's called. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. The NCAA championship. But they got like pretty close one year, I'm pretty sure. And then a guy like Vladar, I wouldn't say he's completely got a left field. He was a 3rd-round pick, and you never know with goalies. Goalies are really random. But he never really had an unbelievable run in Boston, but a really good run in Providence last year. And before the league started, he was in the Czech league, absolutely shredding it. That's kind of when people started to take notice of him before the season even started. So, I really think they're going to give him a chance. And I personally am not I'm a believer that goalie matters a lot, but you can get a goalie that matters a lot for not that much money, if that makes sense. I do think there's rare exceptions, like your Hendrik Lundqvist in the past, and I think Vasilevsky also could be considered one. But I don't like paying $10 million for a goalie. And I think if you're the Boston Bruins, if you believe one of these guys could be a good to a slightly to a, let's just say top 10 goalie in the league for $1 to $2 million, and you could use that cap space to bring in another defenseman, like I think that's the best way for them to have a chance with this same core, which is aging, to get one more chance at the Cup. Again, I'm not in the room. I don't know, but maybe they're thinking something completely different, but that's at least my angle on it.
Well, looking at next season, Swayman's making $925,000. Daniel Vladar is making $750,000. So it'd certainly be nice to go into that with tons of money to spend on the rest of your roster. Personally, I think bringing back a veteran goalie makes a lot of sense, whether it's Rask or Halak, with those two being so young and having limited NHL experience. I think having at least a veteran in the room makes a lot of sense. Maybe get like a co-goalie to kind of split some time throughout the entire season. Ups and downs are going to come with a young goalie. So I do think bringing a veteran back in some capacity would be a smart move for the Bruins, but it looks like they have a very bright future in net with Swayman and Vladar in the organization. So DJ, it looks like the Bruins are going to have a very good team going into next year. The top line is set. They're very strong at wing. My last question to you, just looking at a couple free agents going into the season right now, Nick Ritchie, Andre Cachet, final question for you. Any chance those two Bruins return to the team next year?
I would be shocked if Ritchie doesn't. I mean, he's an RFA, and he really, I thought was maybe one of the most undervalued players on the team last year. Former 10th overall pick in the 2014 draft. He just every time they moved him up into a more producing role, he had so many shots on net. And I know shots on net aren't always completely indicative of a player's skill, but having the ability to get 4 to 6 to 7 shots on goal a game is incredibly rare, because you'd think like, okay, every player in the NHL has the skill to put the puck on net every time they shoot, but not all of them actually make shots on net happen at a disproportionate rate. That's why if you bet on shot props, it's almost always 2.5, except for the rare exceptions like your Pasternaks. And Ritchie was a really smart bet for a little while there, if you could find it on FanDuels and other sites, because when Pasternak or any of those other guys were out, he was on the top power play, which he actually held for longer, even when some of the guys came back in, and was with Krejci before Hall kind of took over there. And he was the main shot producer there. 15 goals isn't anything that I think is insane, but I really do think they value his size as well, and his ability to just keep the puck away from defenders. So I'd be shocked if he didn't come back. Andre Cachet, a guy that I thought they stole from the Ducks, and I was really mad when they got him. And obviously injuries have just derailed him in Boston. I think that the only way he comes back is if he's willing to sign a very cheap deal. But at this rate, I wonder if they're not willing to let him free. I haven't seen anything on that. Have they tendered him? Do you know? I don't even know if we know that yet, honestly.
No, I've heard nothing in regards to him. Yeah. Like you mentioned, the injuries have crushed him. They do have an opening there on the right wing on the third line, which would probably be his role if he decided to come back to Boston. Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard much in regards to him. I think you're right with Ritchie. If they're going to have a small team, like their fourth line's respectable in my opinion. They're gritty. Lazar, Wagner, Frederick. They're going to get in your face. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the rest of this team, man, it's small. They
Ritchie's
almost need to make sure they bring someone like Ritchie back.
Yeah, he's a big boy. I mean, I know Trent Frederick is. I love the guy. I love watching him play. I'm excited to hopefully see him kind of mold into a bit of a pest because I do think that he was a first round pick. I feel like people just forget about that completely. Like, I know he's not going to end up scoring. He's never going to have a 20 goal season or whatever, but I do think he has a bit more offensive upside than people give him credit for. And he's just hilarious to watch. I love watching him play. Honestly, I love that kind of old school player once in a while. And, he just, and I don't love this, but he does fit what the Boston Bruins are. And I do like to see him get kind of rewarded and re-signed. And, I wish the best for him. And I hope that Buffalo can be competitive and maybe we could see, a little fight here or there, like the old Lucic days when he ran Miller and stuff. It could be fun. Let's get that rivalry renewed. I got some Sabre stuff behind me here, so let's bring it back.
That requires your Sabres to be relevant and actually do something smart. I mean, you guys just can't get out of your own way. It's brutal. I mean, we could do a whole hour on the Buffalo Sabres, but my God, it's gonna there's gonna be a lot of changes there in Buffalo for you guys to get to the Bruins level. But
next time we talk, I have on decent authority. I think that we'll have some Sabres news to cover, whether it be Eichel or Ristolainen or maybe both. So
I'll take Ristolainen if you're trading them.
I mean, I'll give them to you. Like, I was actually last thing I was thinking the perfect trade, and this again, people could argue with me on this, would be Ristolainen to Montreal for their first round pick, the 30th overall, and Jonathan Drouin. I think it's the perfect trade. Like, Drouin wants to get out of there. Ristolainen wants to get out of Buffalo.
But it's not like, I can't wait to go to Buffalo. I feel like if I was told that I was getting traded to Buffalo, I'd be like, I love Montreal. The city is beautiful. The fans are amazing. You guys are so friendly to me and my family.
He doesn't want the pressure of playing in Canada. I really think that's it. I don't think he wants to be in Canada.
There's
in
no
Montreal
pressure
anymore.
in Buffalo because you guys.
There's none. No, there's none. I mean, it's just we're so bad. It's honestly one of the funniest things in the world to have a league with so much parity that a team can enter the league, and like even the Kraken, people are like, oh, they might make the playoffs, like we saw Vegas, and the Sabres have been a decade of just abysmal failures. It's fun. It's really fun.
Well, DJ, before we let you go, man, how can our listeners keep in touch with you on social media and listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so the Morning Skate podcast is a bit suspended right now because we only cover daily fantasy hockey, so there's no daily fantasy hockey to cover, but we'll be back in October. The season will be back on the 14th of October, and we'll be firing off at least 2 podcasts a week with that. The Mayo Media Network as well, that is strictly gambling, daily fantasy sports, and props, etc. Again, a little bit on a hiatus right now, so I'm trying to get some more stuff in the summertime. The Charging Buffalo, honestly, it doesn't matter if you're a Sabres fan or not. Follow it. The draft guide coming out tomorrow is 90 pages with an unbelievable amount of detail. We have people that have worked in the CHL. We have people that work in the NHL that are in on this team. Incredibly, incredibly good. Some really talented people that you're going to hear about in the future. I'm really, really proud of it. I read through it today. It's awesome. I mean, if you have a question on any prospect. Okay, so I didn't read every word. I'm not going to lie. I read through the first bit and then the top 10 prospects, and then I kind of skimmed the next 20 because I know some of them, but I'm not a draft expert. Charging Buffalo, and then follow me on Twitter. I put my handle, I think I'm pointing to it correctly, right here.
Yep.
At DJ_Mitchell94. I'm going to be starting my own stuff. Some of the Charging Buffalo, potentially. There's still a lot of stakeholders that I'm trying to reach out to figure out. I'm going to be doing some more video work, etc. I'm not going to get into too many details because nothing's really set in stone yet. But it's mainly just going to be a solo project by me where I'll be. Best example is if you follow John Boy, I'm going to try to do something kind of similar to that with a little bit more of a little bit analytical, but not too much. I want it to be kind of for the common man without it being like strictly just like dumbed down. I want to like show people like why teams do what they do, as well as have some fun. So like if Trent Frederick fights Stalin, and it's an hilarious fight that stems from I want to cover that and like have a breakdown video of that as well. So that's kind of my plan right now. I'm hoping to get a couple videos up by the end of August. September, we'll just get rolling. And in October, my goal is 3 videos a week. So
there you go.
The content, if you follow me, there will be never ending content from me.
Yeah. Hell
yeah. It's going to be 4 podcasts and 3 videos a week, pretty much on average.
Nice. Well, when you get that up and running, man, let me know. We'll definitely drop you a couple of shout outs here on Down the Block. We'll get some people subbed your way. So you're definitely going to check out DJ on all forms of social media, and definitely check out his YouTube or all his podcasts later in the future. This is the man you want to listen to when it comes to anything related to the National Hockey League. That's why I had him on today. And just knowing that he doesn't love the fact that Taylor Hall's a Bruin, I just, of course, had to make him my guest today. So DJ,
I wish him best.
Well, DJ, thank you very much, man, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, anytime. And I will be, next time I see you, I'll wear my reverse retro Buffalo Sabres Taylor Hall jersey just so you can make fun of me again for spending $200 on it.
Good. So you'll wear the Kraken stuff on the Bruins show and the Hall jersey on the Kraken show. We're,
No.
we're doing well here, man. We're getting the right outfits for these shows. I'll probably still be wearing this shirt, but we'll see what
honestly,
happens.
I'm so mad that I can't get a Kraken jersey till September. Like it's a big downer for me. So, okay, but we'll get back to it. Thanks everyone for listening again. I am so excited for what's to come from me, but what's coming from Walt's even better. He gets the best guests for all the sports. So keep listening, keep letting him rock. I mean, he gets people on. I'm like, how do you even get these people? What are you doing? Who are you help? Like, I want to know the secret. No, bye. Yeah, it's good to talk to you again. Go Bonnies tomorrow as well. I mean we have to, and I'll let you close it out. I'm not trying to steal your ending here.
Don't forget to sub the channel, everyone. Down the Block Sports. If you haven't yet, hit the subscription thing below. Also, don't forget to like this video. You're going to want to check out more videos. We're having DJ on again later this week. So you're going to want to check that out. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon.